What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the overall markets. Just note that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed 30. And the offer ends at the end of March. Anyways, let's talk about the market now. So as far as SPY is going, we're in this chop zone between this 604 and 608 zone, which is when we tend to see a lot of sideways price action. We notice that so far SPY is actually below 606, showing some signs that it might reject here and start to dip just a bit to fill some of its gaps. I do see a risk of that, and we'll see how things end up progressing from here, at least moving forward. But just know that we just got initial jobless claims that was aligned with the expectations, and the 4-week average was also aligned with expectations. At 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the 4 and 8-week bill auctions coming out, so that may cause some more volatility. So get ready for that just to be safe. Besides that, there's nothing else that's too crazy. I also want to add that today we just got American Airlines earnings. There's nothing else that's too crazy. Unfortunately, their earnings were very lackluster. So they mentioned that they are expecting a loss per share of about 20 to 40 cents. That's the adjusted loss for the first 3 months of 2025, given the current demand trends. They also said that they expect their unit costs, including fuel, to rise in the low single-digit percentage points over the first quarter of 2025. So not the best of news for them, at least moving forward. Their earnings outlook contrasts, the 7-year forecast from its rivals like United Airlines and Delta. So not the best of news, right? We've seen this come out, especially considering that the other airlines that were announcing their earnings did really, really well. So this is like one of the first times we've seen, a major airline with some bad earnings, at least during this cycle. So we'll see how it goes. But if anything, the share price is down as a result of this, and this is now underperforming just a bit. So that's the honest truth. Hopefully they do better during the next report, but they are expecting some losses to perpetuate at least as time goes on. For other pieces of news, just note that we also happen to have this right here. So the S&P 500 hits new all-time highs, saw a very, very nice rally since yesterday. But once we hit those all-time highs, I did give you guys a warning that we're going to be entering this chop zone and a very, very tough resistance. And you guys can see the effect of that resistance right now. So just keep that in mind. That is what's causing things to slow down. It's very, very important. Now, on top of this, I want to mention that Elon Musk made some comments about the $500 billion AI investments that were supposed to be made. He's arguing that many of these companies don't have the funding. This is very contentious, but I just wanted to call that out. And then we also had JP Morgan Chase's CEO, Jamie Dimon, come out. He has downplayed fears of increasing inflation with tariffs increasing. He said that if it's a little inflationary, but it's good for national security, so be it. People may disagree with him. Sure, completely understandable. Some people do agree with him. It is what it is. But I just wanted to call him out. He's making a lot of headlines right now. Besides that, there's nothing else that's too crazy, at least so far, at least on the news. So now let's just focus on the charts. So as far as SPY is going, I just want to mention that when you look at the daily charts, okay, we have this giant gap over here all the way down to 603. There's another gap down here around 597. So we have all these gaps, and we hit the all-time high at this resistance. So hypothetically, if you break 608, you're looking for an attempt to get back up into the 610s. If we can't break past the all-time high and we end up losing the 605, there's going to be a risk of us coming down to 603, maybe a little bit below that to fill this gap. And then we'll have to see what kind of reaction we get at like 602 to 600. There's going to be a risk of us dipping if we can't hold our key support. So make sure you watch this very closely. Watch and see if we can hold 603. I do see a risk of this potentially dipping a bit, so we'll be watching the reaction at least for now. I also want to mention that the 4-hour PPO is showing like a potential crossover. So when we open, there might be a little pop in volatility to grab. They might grab liquidity up here before we continue to see a dip. We are known for kind of like chomping around ranges like this. This is what like typically happens up here. If you look at this right over here, but because there's a gap below, if we might not get just chomp, we might actually see a little bit of a dip. Might see something like this where we kind of dip a little bit, then we come back down to fill this gap. Then we'll see if we get some kind of bounce or not, or if we continue to go lower. So I'm watching for that very closely on SPY. On the QQQ, we have something similar. We have this gap to fill around 527. I do anticipate this is going to be dipping. We did call this move out yesterday, and if that fails us, we're looking for 525. This is going to be very close to where our 20 EMA is going to align once time progresses. So look for a little bit of a dip, and we'll see if we bounce or not, so give it some time. For the Russell 2000, we're dipping right here. We have a gap to fill back down towards 225. I think this might be dipping a little bit lower, especially as we're showing weakness in the pre-markets, especially compared to other predecessors out there. So I think this is favoring downside. Unless we try to break 228 and 230, I think we favor a move all the way down to 225 or below. So just keep that in mind. For ES, we're at this resistance around 61.25. If we can't break past that, we're looking for a retest of 60.80. So I'll be watching that very closely. On NQ, notice that we're not holding 22,000. We had to hold that to remain bullish. If that doesn't hold, we're looking for a test of 21,800 flat. If not, a little bit below that, and we'll see if we bounce, but there is still that risk of some downside. Bitcoin has a head and shoulders like structure. Unless we reclaim 103,600 to bounce, if we can't do that, there's going to be a risk of us continuing to fall back down to like 99,000. So just keep that in mind. For Nvda, we have a nice looking cup-like structure that's forming. So this is forming a nice cup like this. We'll have to see if this forms like a handle or something like this. It depends though. If we could break 147 right here, we could push for 150. And if we can't break past 147, look at 144 as our main support. If that fails us, we could be dipping closer to 145 before we get some kind of bounce. So be a little bit careful with Nvda. I'll be watching to see what kind of reaction we get. Also, it's worth noting that Tesla is showing a little bit of weakness. We do love to push in the mornings, but notice that we had this big red bar and we're making lower highs since. We're barely holding 414 to 50 EMA. If that fails us, then yes, I'm looking for 406 or below. If you break this trend line, we could try to balance, but I'm going to be watching to see if Tesla gets a rejection here. This is also resembling like a head and shoulders, a left shoulder, a head and then a right shoulder. There's been lots of negative news that came out involving them increasing prices in Canada, and also some news involving, the EV mandate shifting. So it's been negatively affecting Tesla for the short term. This is just a short-term projection because they have earnings next week and that could change everything. So just keep that in mind. So once again, just to clarify, if we reclaim this blue trend line, we could still try to uptrend. If we can't reclaim the blue trend line, if we push and then reject, watch 414. If that doesn't hold, we are going to be dipping down to like the lower 400s. Apple's trying to bounce. We could be looking for a test of 227. It is showing a little bit of strength compared to the markets. Just keep that in mind. For a few more, we have Coinbase has this gap to fill. It's going to likely try to push it, but if we make a lower high, we could continue to dip to about 286 or below. So I'd see something like this where we start dipping lower. If 286 is not a hold, we're looking for 280 flat. So we'll have to see what kind of reaction we get. I do anticipate a little push to fill that gap before rejection, so just keep that in mind. Just for a few more, Amazon is showing resilience. We have 236 or 235 as our main resistance. We'll see if we break that or not. I'll be watching that very, very closely. If we break 235, we're looking for 237 as our target. If we can't break it, there's going to be risk of this returning to 233, and we have to lose that to turn back down. So as of right now, it's range bound. If we break this resistance, we turn back up. If we lose the support here, we're going to be dipping back down. If 233 fails us, we're looking for 230. Otherwise, we're watching this range just to see which way Amazon goes. Meta is showing some resilience as well. Very flat in the pre-markets, but we'll be watching to see if we can break 630 to start pushing back up to 632. And if we end up losing 623, we're looking for a dip to about 618. So we're stuck in the middle. We still have this cup and handle structure, but we'll give this some time to develop. Microsoft is looking a little bit weaker. It could be looking for a retracement to 440. I'm seeing a little bit of weakness on the 4-hour. And Google is also showing some weakness, might be retesting 198 if 200 fails us. So watch these levels just to be safe. With that being said, that is my update for the pre-markets. We'll see how things end up going. I do see a risk of the market dipping as a little bit higher, but we'll see. And make sure you watch your levels just to be safe. I'll see you guys in just a couple of hours for another update. Thank you for listening, and peace out.